Welcome back to World Crisis Radio. Let me point you to Tarpley.net. As usual, new things this week, part of a discussion round on Press TV about the evolution of the Libyan crisis. That's up there. And on the French page, Radio Courtoisie, which I understand is a conservative Catholic FM radio station or internet radio station, was on there for a quarter hour or 20 minutes about the 9/11 anniversary. And, of course, you can get my book in French, La Terreur Fabriquée, but above all, take a look at the 5th edition of 9/11 Synthetic Terror made in USA, the one that has the 46, count them, 46 drills, and we got a couple of drills coming up. There's one going on today, Operation Mountain Guardian. Talk about that in just a minute. The breakdown crisis is therefore universal, and the solution has to be the result of a change of policy, and the desire of the world to buy these U.S. Treasury bonds on the 10-year Treasury. The interest rate this morning was down to 1.68, which seems to be the lowest in recent recorded history, and therefore people want this safe haven. It's really not that safe there either, of course, but it simply shows the fear, the tremendous paralyzing fear that is abroad in the world. Gold has gone down. The biggest weekly collapse of gold in dollar terms since January 1980. And the stock markets, of course, have just had their worst two-day bout since 2008, 2009. It's a generalized rout. So the U.S. looks bad. Europe looks bad. China doesn't look so great. Brazil and other emerging markets look pretty bad. India, nothing to write home about there either. So it's a depression. Now, let's therefore go through what a programmatic approach would be. For Europe, let's start with Europe. We have a request this week to say something in Poland about the six-pack, and that is coming. Don't despair. The wheels grind slowly, but they do grind. Question is now that the depression requires a recovery program. So let's go with Europe first and say, what should Europe do? But first, what should Europe not do? Here's what Europe should not do. First of all, no austerity. The Greek economy, as a result of the lunatic austerity proposals and demands of the IMF and the European Union, the Eurocrats, Euroligarchs, and the international financier oligarchy, the Greek economy has now shrunk by 8%, and people are now demanding the firing of hundreds of thousands of civil servants. This is simply national suicide. This is a lunatic fetish, the people who believe this at least. This is the destruction of society. Austerity does not work. From Bruning to Schwarzenegger to Papandreou, austerity fails, does not work. You cut the budget now, you'll get a bigger deficit. That's what we're seeing. Once again, how many times do we have to do it? Do we have to drown these people in every river of the world, as I think Einstein once said? No to austerity. Maintain the social safety net. Increase it if you've got the political clout. Mainly, dump Papandreou and dump similar people. Remember that the leftists in this kind of a climate are actually worse than the right-wingers because the leftists are generally controlled by the CIA and Soros. So, no to austerity. Secondly, no bailouts. No more bailouts. You cannot bail out a black hole. The derivatives cancer, the derivatives bubble is a black hole. It will eat as much liquidity as can be generated beneath the moon and still be equally bankrupt. Ever ask yourself, how come these losses are so big? How can those Irish banks have such huge losses? It's more than the value of the entire real estate and whatever else is supposed to be the basis of the crisis. It's because of that wonderful magic of derivatives that they can pyramid and multiply and increase the losses on an astronomical basis. You cannot bail this out. You've got to use the disintegrator gun. We'll be there in a minute. No bailouts, and not from outside of Europe, not from Dilma. Dilma, get your own house in order, and the Chinese also don't buy European bailout bonds. This is absolutely ridiculous. Another no. No to the euro bonds. Sorry, Barroso. Barroso, the Portuguese fascist in the grand tradition of Salazar, wants to have euro bonds. No. No euro bonds and no bailout. How about bank recapitalization? No. You cannot recapitalize banks that are intrinsically bankrupt because of derivatives speculation, and the derivatives are literally everywhere. How about the six-pack? The six-pack, for those who are not following in the bowels of the Brussels bureaucracy of Eurocrats and Eurogawks, the Maastricht convergence criteria, you remember, that you're not allowed to have a budget deficit of more than 3% of your GDP. The six-pack is an attempt to retighten the corset, to retighten the strangulation that had been imposed, this monetarist neoliberal monstrosity of the Maastricht criteria. This is supposed to be retightened by the six-pack, and the answer to that, once again, is no. How about the U.S. proposal? The European Financial Stability Fund needs more money. Well, what you can do is you've got 450 billion euros in there. Why not use that as speculative capital? Why not leverage that by using that to borrow 10 times as much? No, because once you do that, you are then in the sights of Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch, who will then attack you, and they'll say, you are not AAA anymore because you contain countries that we are going to downgrade. So as soon as one of those component countries is downgraded, the entire European Financial Stability Fund will also be downgraded. This may happen anyway. So these are many things not to do. No austerity, no bailouts, no Dilma, no Eurobonds, no bank recapitalization, no six-pack, no Maastricht, no leverage of the European Financial Stability Fund. Instead, catch up on what you haven't done. The Euro-Tobin is first. The European Commission, again, under pressure from Sarkozy and Merkel to do something, to do anything, is going to impose a rather small, actually infinitesimal, tax on financial turnover. We have news. Peter Orszag in the Obama White House had demanded a financial transfer tax, and he was then screamed at by Larry Summers that what he had done was immoral. We'll have the details in the next segment. But the Euro-Tobin, make the Euro-Tobin a 1% tax on all financial transactions and make that payable to the treasuries of the nation states, not for bailout purposes, but to maintain the social safety net, the human capital, which is the main advantage of Europe. Some hedge funds will protest that this cuts into their business. Too bad, guys. We have too many hedge funds. It's time to have some more manufacturing. Ban credit default swaps. Ban collateralized debt obligations. Close the zombie banks. Abolish the category of too big to fail, and you've now got a list of 12 to 15 banks. We're told that the European stress tests reveal that 12 or 15 banks are going to have to be recapitalized. Well, they can't be recapitalized unless and until you wipe out the derivatives that are in them. This clearly means then, and I recommend this as an approach for equity so that you don't have some countries defaulting and some not, go for a universal cancellation of all derivatives debt. Whereas derivatives were illegal pretty much worldwide under the U.S. Commodities Exchange Act of 1936. From 1936 to 1982, and in many categories until 1999, derivatives were illegal. Make them illegal again. What you've got to do now is freeze all of those claims, and this will then extend the benefit of a orderly debt moratorium to all the countries, but it will target derivatives, which are the heart of the crisis. Back in a minute.